I've seen people who are 95 years old. When we scan their brains with an MRI or a CAT scan, their brains look much better and much healthier than that of a 30-year-old because of the way that they've taken care of their brains and their bodies throughout their life. Right. And so there are things that we can do every single day to keep our brains healthy, keep them functioning at a high level.
Hello, Profit First entrepreneurs and thought leaders. I am so excited today because we have a very special guest. We are going to be talking about a different topic, and it's using your brain to take your business to the next level. And I'm super excited because we have Dr. Philippe Douyon joining us. He's a board certified neurologist who completed his residency in neurology at NYU. He also completed his fellowship in clinical neurophysiology at Weill Cornell Medical College. He spent 5 years as an attending neurologist, totally butcher this, epileptologist at Northeast Regional Epilepsy Group. He's also the founder and CEO of a health, wellness, and technology company called the NL Brain Fit Institute, which was created to improve people's health and quality of life. Through the NL Brain Fit Institute, he has created individualized exercise regimens based upon a person's medical and neurological needs, as well as their personal goals. In November of 2018, he released Dr. Douillon's Brain Fit app, which is a game designed to teach people about the impact of food and exercise on the body and brain. Dr. Douyon is also the author of the book Neuroplasticity, The Brain Superpower, which speaks about the brain's ability to learn, adapt, and heal. And in his book, he discusses actionable steps that we can all take to maintain a certain level of healthy brain. So please join me in welcoming Dr. Douyon to the platform. Hi, Dr. Douyon. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great. Thank you so much for having me.
I'm so excited about this conversation. Hopefully, I did not butcher all those medical terms.
No, no, you did just fine.
Well, I am so excited about this, especially in terms of speaking at it from an entrepreneur standpoint. And I'm curious, first of all, because you obviously work with business leaders around the country and
Mhm.
and around the world. Tell me about, first of all, how did you find this topic and how does it apply? Like, how did you find that this was a missing gap in entrepreneurship and leadership and teams in general?
Yeah, I think entrepreneurs and business leaders are one of the few groups of people that recognize that in order for them to take their businesses and their lives to the next level, that they've got to change their brain. They've got to change their mindset, that they have to actually evolve. And I wish that we can communicate that effectively to patients, to people with chronic illnesses, because they don't realize that they need to evolve, but entrepreneurs certainly do. And so it allows for this natural sort of relationship with entrepreneurs and business leaders, because in order for them to achieve the success that they want to, it all starts in their brain. It all starts with their ability to rewire their brains for success.
I love it. I love it. Such an important topic. The fact that people can rewire their brain for success. And this is such an important topic because, having come from a corporate environment, I remember when I was in college, I interned at Procter and Gamble, and I absolutely love that company. And I remember one of the first things that they gave us when I joined was a problem solving test. And, luckily, I was able to pass that and be with the company for several years as an intern. However, there were people that didn't pass the exam. And what it meant was they couldn't get that opportunity. And I think that this is a really important topic because you're telling us that our brains can change. And I know so many of us have probably implemented our own companies, problem solving tests, IQ tests, those type of things. And I'm curious about this whole brain evolving type of thing.
Yeah. So look, we used to think that our brains were fairly static, that the only times our brains might change is if we got some kind of traumatic brain injury or if we develop some kind of degenerative disease like a dementia, like an Alzheimer's dementia. But we now know that our brains are changing every moment of every day. They're changing with every thought we have, every action that we take, that we've got the ability to make new neurons, new brain cells, and make new connections within those brain cells within our brains at any given moment, as long as we're giving our brains what it needs in order to do so. And what makes that so incredibly special is that if our brains are capable of changing, if they're meant to change, that means that we're meant to change. That means that we're meant to evolve. And that ability to evolve lies within us. We can choose to evolve in any direction that we want to, which means that we can learn new things, which means that we can adapt, which means that we can problem solve, like you were just mentioning.
I love that. And so many times I've had conversation with people and they go, that's just not my zone of genius.
Yeah.
That's just not what I'm good at. Or they'll go, I'm not a numbers person. And so they'll allow someone else to take control. And the fact that we can evolve into whatever we need to be, I think it's really something to think about from that standpoint. And, one of the things I'd like to ask you, first of all, being a board certified neurologist, being someone that has been trained in training, changing brains, right? How elastic is the brain? How flexible is it for us to really learn new things?
Oh, we can learn new things at any moment of our lives. I mean, we used to think that, oh, kids have this great capacity to learn, right? And they do, but so do adults. But here's something that kids do that adults don't. Kids explore their environment. Kids are always moving. And we know that exercise is the biggest promoter of neuroplasticity, right? And if you look at the most successful business leaders, the most successful entrepreneurs, not only are they doing things to enhance the power of their minds, but they're also physically active. They're also exercising. You cannot have a powerful mind without a healthy brain. And so you've got to be doing things that are going to keep your brain healthy if you want to evolve into the business leader that you want to be. If you want to be, as successful as you can possibly be, you've got to be doing things that are going to be good for your brain and your body.
I love that. So let's talk about that. I think this is a great entry point into this conversation. You said there's a correlation between physical fitness and those that have healthy brains that are able to learn new things. What does that look like in terms of physical activity? Where are some places that we can start with that?
Yeah. So, there are some studies out there that show if you're somebody who's starting to develop some cognitive issues, like some memory issues, even walking 40 to 45 minutes per day can help to reverse that, right? So, yes, you should be doing some resistance training. Yes, you do need to do some cardio. But if you're somebody who loves to dance, find a way to dance 3 or 4 times a week for 30 to 45 minutes. Our brains evolved into this big, complex organ with all these neurons. It's somewhere between 60 to 100 billion neurons and trillions of connections amongst all these neurons because our earlier ancestors needed to move. They needed to move to find prey. They needed to move to escape predators. They needed to move to new climates. They needed to explore their environment. And in today's world, everything comes to us so easy, right? Like we live sedentary lives, and that has a debilitating impact on the brain. That actually causes our brains to shrink. And so getting our bodies moving is incredibly important. And that should include resistance training, that should include some cardio. But like I said, if you're somebody who doesn't like to do those things and you love to dance, find a way to dance. If you love playing tennis, find a way to play tennis, whatever that is that you are passionate about.
I love that. Just 45 minutes a day, just a little brisk walk around the neighborhood, right?
Mhm.
It's an opportunity to explore new things. And I can't, I'm always floored by just how simple a walk is. It just gets you thinking about different things. Maybe you run into a neighbor or maybe you see something that just pops in your mind and it always leaves you on a tangent of, I wonder if, or I wonder how, or I wonder, how that really works. But it opens up like just physically being in movement. And there's nothing like traveling and seeing how other people live on different parts of the world.
Yeah, the key is you need to have new experiences. That is so important for the brain. That also helps the brain create new neurons and new connections, having new experiences. And
I love it.
even surrounding yourself with people who didn't grow up like you, who don't think like you, right? You've got to hear them out in terms of their life experiences and their thought processes. Doesn't mean that you have to adapt those, to your life, but listening to them will allow your brain to make new neurons and new connections.
Oh, wow. I remember when I was in high school psychology. I'm not going to even tell you the year or decades ago it was. And I did say the word decades. But I remember like the theory was that we had a limited amount of brain cells And of course, you had more when you were born, and as you grow, they die. And literally, it was kind of like this impression that, once you got to a certain age, you just prayed that you had some left over, to make those dendrites and synapses. Tell me about, is that wrong? Is that not true?
Oh no, that's definitely wrong. Right. So you certainly do have a certain amount of brain cells, 60 to 100 billion neurons, but you have the ability to make new ones your entire life. I've seen people who are 95 years old. When we scan their brains with an MRI or a CAT scan, their brains look much better and much healthier than that of a 30-year-old because of the way that they've taken care of their brains and their bodies throughout their life. Right. And so there are things that we can do every single day to keep our brains healthy, keep them functioning at a high level.
I love it. A lot of our entrepreneurs that I have met, a lot of us are, you know, I wouldn't call us spring chickens, in our 40s, maybe our 50s, some of us in our 60s. And, I know it's kind of a taboo topic. I think a lot of us, the conversation started coming out more in this last presidential debate that happened with our president Biden and questions regarding his cognitivity and things like that. And suddenly age has come into play. And I know a lot of times, when people get into their 40s, you hear about the 40s brain, the menopause brain. You hear about, people saying, I don't remember things like I used to remember things. And these are the stories that people tell themselves,
Yeah.
right? I'm curious, because I'm sure that you experience this in your work.
Mm-hmm.
And first of all, as an entrepreneur, I'm probably speaking to you if you felt like, okay, maybe things are just a little bit harder to remember things or learn things or memorize things. What are some things that we can do to increase the sharpness? Or maybe it starts with even the talk that we tell ourselves.
Oh, definitely. I mean, you certainly want to give yourself positive messages, right? Your brain is always looking to prove you right. So if you tell yourself, oh man, my memory sucks. Well, your brain is going to say, you know what? You're absolutely right. Remember that time you went to the grocery store and you forgot why you went there? Remember that time you misplaced your keys? These are things that we all do. Doesn't mean that our brains are not functioning the way that they should be, right? And so it does first start with the messages that you are communicating to yourself. You've got to communicate to yourself with grace. You've got to communicate to yourself with a certain level of love and acceptance, right? Exercise, like we talked about, is so important for brain health that there are studies that show that if you go out for a run an hour before you take a test, you'll do better on that test than if you cram the last hour. And so you got to get your body moving. The other thing that we need to do is you have to get sleep. You've got to sleep 6 to 8 hours every single night. Entrepreneurs tend to want to like work until the wee hours of the morning. They're kind of like, oh, I'll just sleep when I'm dead. Well, the reality is, if you take that mentality, you're going to be dead a lot faster. And your brain is certainly not going to be as sharp. During the deeper stages of sleep is when your brain clears out the toxins that have built up throughout the day. During the deeper stages of sleep is when neuroplasticity occurs, when you're making new neurons and new connections. The other thing you want to do is find healthy ways to minimize stress. Stress is a big killer of neurons. Chronic stress kills neurons, especially in the parts of the brain responsible for memory. Right? So just exercising, getting enough sleep, minimizing stress, the words that you tell yourself are all incredibly important to keep your brain as sharp as possible.
I love it. I love it. So it's so important. It starts with the message that we are telling ourselves, right? And I think that some of us, we train ourselves when I get to this age, this is going to happen. And so, it's happening, and you're right. We can't buy into that, right? Because, you know, unknowingly we're actually shooting off those brain cells, right? We're living off into that theory that I told you guys about that I learned in high school that we've got certain amount of brain cells and when they're gone, you just hope that you're left with a couple. And we can't allow that to happen. We can't predict that kind of negativity upon or bring that type of negativity upon ourselves. Now, one of the things, Dr. Dion, that we had talked about earlier was I had talked about limiting our team and limiting them through, like I told you our example about the test, right? The IQ test, the things like that were being done. And, I'm a big proponent of this type of work where we have more potential than we've ever imagined, right? And unfortunately, when we label our employees or we label our team and we put them in a box, one, it affects them, right?
Yep.
And then second of all, we don't develop their true potential. Like I've never gotten a superstar that walked into my office on day one and I said, you are the perfect hire. We
Right.
made the perfect hire. We groomed the perfect hire, but they never walked into our office. I'm sorry if you guys are listening, the perfect hire.
Yeah.
And so let's talk. And if you ask me on any given day, would I hire them again? I probably would say to each and every one, heck no. But but the reality is nobody is the perfect hire. You create that perfect hire. So let's talk
Hmm.
about how do we increase neuroplasticity within our team without being demeaning, without really that we do it in a way that upbuilds and strengthens to say, hey, we all have this capability. We all have the ability to grow and learn beyond what we are currently at.
Yeah. So I'm somebody who doesn't believe in IQ tests because everybody's brain is capable of greatness, right? Everybody will do well on a test or on a challenge if you give them what to study, they are focused on it, and they are passionate about it, right? And to your point, there are no perfect hires. You have to invest in your team. And I remember when I was in this big group epilepsy practice, the owner of the practice came to me one day and said, how do I get everybody else, all the other doctors, to buy in and be as valuable to this team and see the patients that you see? How do I get them to be the kind of employee that you are? And I said to him, I have no idea. This practice is your vision. It's not my vision. And so I think first and foremost, you have to be clear on what the vision of your business is, because then you have to sell that vision to your employees. They have to have a North Star, something that's going to guide them through. And you have to invest in them, right? So you have to give them things that they can do, maybe even every single day, that allows them to train. If not every day, then maybe every week. That allows them to train in the content that's important for your business. So that way they can become really great employees. They can become the superstars that you need. But it also allows them to become better business people themselves. So that way they can go out, take the skills that they've learned from you, and potentially adapt that to new situations, right? Because most employees are not staying with you for a lifetime. And so you've got to invest in a way that allows them to grow and be better. They should leave your company better than when they first started.
Oh, I love that. Such really juicy morsels there. It's setting that North Star, is what you said, Dr. Douyon, setting the North Star. And I think sometimes, as founders, we don't realize how much weight we have. Every evaluation that you give, even if that person seems to be mentally strong, right? When you tell them that's not your gift, that's what they remember. That becomes part of their DNA. That's
Yep.
not their gift. And our words have that power, just like we can speak to ourselves. Do I have the 40-year-old brain or do I have the 20-year-old brain? It's a story I tell myself. That story, because of the position I'm given, that I tell someone else, it impacts them. I remember when I first started with Anderson, right after college, we went into our room, our orientation room, and there probably was like 40 of us starting with that start class in the Chicago office. And the first thing they said was, you are the best and the brightest. Welcome to Arthur Anderson. And literally, we looked around and we're like, whoa, 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 we can do anything. We're going to be talking to CEOs, and I just got out of college. But it was the fact that I said, you are the best and the brightest. That belief already was there and
Yep.
planted. And imagine if you walked into your office and you told your staff, you are the best and the brightest.
Yep. You've got to speak life into people. Words are incredibly powerful. In fact, I tell people often that words are the verbal embodiment of power, right? When we look at the three major religious texts, the Bible, right, in the book of Genesis, talks about how God said, let there be light, and there was light. It wasn't God snapped his fingers. It wasn't God, you know, did a spin and turned around. It's God spoke it into existence, right? The Torah speaks of the the 10 utterances, or we know them as the 10 commandments, as the rules for living a really godly sort of life. And even the Quran says that it is better to give somebody a compliment in a time of injury than to do them a favor. That words are so powerful that you're better off when somebody is down and out of giving them a compliment, saying something positive. And so, are you speaking life into your staff? Or are the words that you're choosing to use when addressing them, is it really taking away from them?
True. Very true. Now, let's talk about the other side of the coin, right? The other side of the coin. And we've all experienced it as entrepreneurs. There's going to be an underperformer that has a lot of potential.
Yeah.
And and it's interesting because, first of all, the conversation, you have to tread light on it. And we've also had the same underperforming say, well, that's just not my zone of genius. That's not my competency, or this is hard. How do you motivate them to look at their mind as being something that is a growth mindset versus I have limited capacity? How do
Yeah.
you stimulate that in someone else?
So it's interesting. I was recently doing work with a corporate leader who's creating a program for all some other, top tier corporate leaders about how to be a leader to everybody, to the diversity of employees that we have now. And it's interesting because as a leader, you almost have to be everything to everyone, right? It's not just about the work that they're doing for you in the office. You need to understand what's going on behind the scenes of their life. You need to understand how that's impacting their day to day. Employees will come to you for advice that may have nothing to do with work. Just because you are the leader of that business, they expect you to know it all. And sometimes those underperformers, one, you've got to, make an effort to try to understand what's going on in their life. You got to make an effort to try to understand how they were raised, the messages that they were told growing up, right? Because a lot of times some will have family and friends and even school teachers say, "Oh, you're just good at that," or "You really suck at that. You should not go into that," right? And so then you've got to now give them experiences to help them try to rewire their brains, because just telling somebody you need to do this, you need to do this, it's not going to work. There's no point in arguing with anyone. People will always sort of double and triple down on the points that they make because their brains also are trying to prove them right. Their brains don't want to be wrong. Right? And the best way to get somebody to change is to really put them in a new environment, give them a new experience that shows them, um, contrary to what their beliefs are.
Mm.
And if you can do that as an employer, as a leader, if somebody says, you know what, I'm really not good at the accounting, I'm not good at the math, but you give them a problem and you help them work through it. And then you give them another problem that now it's the same principles, but they can do it on their own. And then you follow that up by, see, you're good at this. Now do the next one. Do the next one. You're now giving them a brand new experience that helps them change the way that they think.
And one thing you said was, you said telling them, see, you're good at this. It's
Yeah.
the positive reinforcement.
It's the positive reinforcement.
And I think a lot of times, especially for those of us who come from a corporate background, we're used to the guy in the corner office who never comes out, who doesn't smile at you when you walk by, when you're a new staff, who just kind of talks to his secretary and his buddies that are at his level or higher. And the importance of being able to give feedback and connect with your people
Yeah.
on that level of I see you and I see your wins. And yes, we had a bad day, but I know you can win tomorrow. It's so important.
Yeah, absolutely. And what people don't understand is I often speak about the power of the subconscious mind and how 90 to 95% of our thoughts and behaviors really come from our subconscious mind. And so, as leaders, we need to learn to speak the language of the subconscious mind. And that language are emotions. Emotions are the secret ingredient when it comes to the subconscious mind. And most of us, our brains will always sort of lean towards the negative because our brains are primarily trying to keep us safe. So it's easier for us to live in fear and negativity. Right? It's harder for us to live and love and be more positive. But when you can speak to somebody using the language, the positive language of the subconscious mind, that's going to be 10 times more effective than the negative words that we tell each other. So it's really important to give each other positive affirmations and give each other some grace.
And this is from a board certified neurologist, guys, a board certified neurologist. Okay. He's telling you you can do this. So
Yeah.
this is good stuff. This is really good stuff. And oh my gosh, I can see the dollars now. We can retrain everybody's brain, Oh my goodness, man, I'm like seeing millions, with all these brains. Very, very, very interesting. So let me ask you, so what are some of the challenges that come into play when you're trying to implement I'm going to call it a culture of neuroplasticity in your practice?
Yeah.
What are some of the challenges that you've seen?
So, I've listened to some of your other shows and you talk about implementing systems, right? You also have to implement systems to develop a culture that is about growth, right? There are companies where you come into the office and the first 30 minutes of your day in the office, it's about you learning what needs to be learned for that company. You're not calling clients, you're not doing office work. You are learning the first 30 to 45 minutes. That's what it's about, right? And if you can implement a system like that, even though people are like, wait, 30 to 45 minutes, that's a lot of time. Like we need to get our day going. But you implement a system like that, that's going to pay off dividends in the long run. Right? You're going to have happier staff. You're going to have staff that are doing so much more because now they believe in themselves. You're going to have staff that believes that you're invested in who they truly are, and they're not just a number. Right? Most people are like, oh man, if I died tomorrow, they'd replace me the next day. They don't care about your business because you haven't shown that you care about them. And so you've got to put systems in place that show that you care about them and their ability to grow.
I love that. Systems in place that show that you care about them and you care about their growth. It's intentional.
It's intentional. It's very intentional. And it's more important than, are you going to land this particular client today? Right? Because the
Oh yeah.
turnover, I mean, when you have to turn over staff, that takes time, that takes extra money. That's now you got to retrain people. You don't know if they're going to be good. You might as well just invest from the beginning every single day in the people that you have.
I love it because you're right. If I have a team of folks that believe they're the best and the brightest,
Mm-hmm.
when they got an idea that's going to improve your business, they're not going to hold back because there's
No,
something wrong with you if you don't want to hear it from the best and the brightest.
that's right. Because most people would rather be entrepreneurs than entrepreneurs, right? They'd rather stay in their business, stay in their jobs, and just give ideas and feel like they're going to be heard.
Oh yeah, definitely. Especially if they're compensated well and treated well.
Right.
It's a no-brainer, right? I have a conversation, a keynote where I talk about the average profitability on a business, and people are usually shocked. They're like, it's 5%. I'm like, yeah, it's 5%. That means for $1 million, you might be bringing home $50,000. That's the average profitability in America. And, the reality is that you have to really be intentional about changing that. So, very, very good point there with that. And for most people, they'll make more than $50,000 working in a W-2 job.
Right. Definitely. Right. So you've got to make your business worth it for people to come on.
Absolutely. I absolutely agree with that. This has been a phenomenal conversation. And one of the things that I would love to ask Dr. Douyon, I ask all of our guests is, as we're closing up our time together, is if you could leave our visitors, our listeners, our viewers with one piece of advice, what would that advice be?
So I would think, it's really important to make sure that you've got a purpose, that your business has a purpose, that your employees feel like they're living purposeful life in your business. Because when you don't have a purpose that you feel passionate about every single day, that's akin to your brain dying. And I've seen patients who come in to see me and they're now starting to have signs and symptoms of dementia because they've lost their purpose. And so if you can make your employees feel like they're living a purposeful life, that's also going to take your business to the next few levels.
Oh, wow. Yeah, yeah, definitely. And that's so important. I mean, even with studies that have been done with babies in ICU units, when they're picked up, when they're loved, when they're told they're needed in this world, they actually develop better.
Yeah. And so we need to do the same thing with our employees. We're not so different than babies. We're just bigger,
Well, if our brains
right?
keep growing, apparently we are babies. In many
Yeah.
ways. We've got never-ending potential. So this
Yeah.
was a really deep conversation. Now, Dr. Douyon, in terms of our listeners being able to follow you to learn more, to take their brains to the next level and their team to the next level, what's the best way to learn more or get in contact with you?
Sure. So they can go to my website at www.inlebrainfitinstitute.com. So INLE brainfitinstitute.com. They can follow me on every social media platform. Instagram, my handle is philippe.md. I'm on TikTok, LinkedIn, Facebook. They can email me at philippe.douyon@gmail.com.
Thank you. And what I'll do is I'm going to put Dr. Duyon's information in our show notes. So if you guys are driving, please don't stop. I'll have in the show notes. Just go back to the episode, scroll down, and you'll be able to click on his handles to be able to contact him, to follow him, to learn more about neuroplasticity and developing your potential.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.